I can't save the world, but I can infuse my own best into what's going on around me. That motivates me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what
Mm-hmm.
changed me from an angry dad to a rad dad. you know,
There was a statistic on your. I was going through your Instagram, and there is a statistic of 77% of men suffer from mental health problems. And I was like, wow, that is so high. That is super duper high.
mm.
And
Sorry, I just want to clarify that's UK men. It was a UK study. I didn't
what
put it
is it?
into the content because it didn't fit in the caption, but it was a study done in the UK. So it's 77% of UK men, I believe, what was this, but it's very high. You're right.
Well, here's the thing. Again, a part of that project, interesting that it was from the UK because a part of that project mapped the system that I was working
Oh,
on in
yeah.
class. Um, I'm comparing Canada to the US and the UK. And so, and what you find is there is, actually, I didn't plan to go through this, but there's these correlations where the family dynamics in between our three countries are very, very similar to varying degrees.
Okay.
And one of them that I found that was particularly alarming, and I've brought this up very early in the show, but now I had a chance to compare this with three other countries. And this particular statistic is going to come that you provided here is going to come. Is going to help us put things in perspective. But the statistic was that they were looking at lone parent families where they just one parent in the
Mm,
household with one or more children, and in all three countries, about 81, 83.5, and 86% of lone parent families is just the mother who's with the child.
that's right.
The average in between all three countries was 82.8 or something. It means that there's 82.8% of fathers who are not present in their children's life or
That's right.
have limited presence in their children's lives. So this statistic here, 77% of men suffer from some degree of mental health. It's not specifically to fathers, but the numbers are very high within the same ranges. And my mind goes to connecting dots quite a bit. And so, like, were you able to break this down to some degree? Is it particularly depression? Like, what is going on with us from your perspective that we have such a high propensity to experience mental health? Is it just a thing with age? Is it uh dissatisfaction with career path, relationship, where we're at? I mean, it might be a myriad of things, but how can we
Yeah.
break this down? Because why is it so high? Like, what's going on?
Um, if I'm hearing you correctly, like you're talking about a systemic kind of potential for what the reason is, but then also why does it sustain that high? Is that right? Is that what
Yeah,
you're asking? Yeah.
man, you're so good at reframing my thoughts better than I can say them. Thank you.
No worries. That's that's my job. Um, I just want to make sure I understand you because you're asking really, really good questions. I don't know the answer to this one, and I'm obviously I'm just going to be frank, Lendo. Like I found that stat and I put it into a reel. I
Hmm.
didn't research it. I do remember the article said not only is it 77% of men are dealing with some sort of mental health challenge, and it did state, I remember, that it was a very wide range of mental health challenges.
Hmm.
So I think stress might even be considered one, like high
It should be,
stress.
yeah.
So it's not always depression or anxiety, you know. And the other part of that stat, and I can't remember the number, I think it was 40% of that number feel isolated. And I think that's part of the answer. I think, especially now in this era and how we've been brought up and the modeling we had previously, dealing with feelings wasn't promoted, wasn't proliferated through our generations.
Hmm.
And to add to that, our world's different now. Like the social media world and the constant news and the ability. I think the world's always been a beautiful place, but I also think there's always been a bunch of fucked up shit going on. Sorry, I don't know if I'm allowed to swear, but the world's messed.
Hmm.
But in the past, we only ever saw what was in the newspaper. And now at every moment, we can turn anything on and see the travesties and
Hmm.
tragedies going on around the world. And how's that not affecting people? I don't think it's an isolation of men having this issue. I think we're seeing a lot more challenges in our world with mental health, and that's really why I've decided to go down the mental fitness path for what I'm doing, and that's because I my goal is to help 1,000 men in the next 4 years, and
Mm-hmm.
so I want to do it in a way that is accessible to them. And I think, like you said earlier, and like I know from my experience, we're resistant to therapy. And the process I'm using helps you change the behavior without forcing you into the emotions. But I'll be honest, I haven't dealt with a single man that doesn't end up in the emotions once they've kind of addressed some of these things. But
Mm-hmm.
once we learn self love and self empathy, then we can have more capacity for love in the world. And that's ultimately my vision is I want to help fathers because I think our world needs love right now. And if fathers have more capacity to love, the children they bring up will also, and that will proliferate itself through the world. I'm not answering your question exactly because I
It's
don't
a
know the
hard one.
answer, but I think my answer is that um, we're not facing it as traditionally as men. We're not facing it. I think that's shifting a bit. I think things are changing in the world, and the more we put things in front of us, in front of ourselves that are uncomfortable, from a perspective that shows us that we have capacity to change it, um, at the micro level. I can't save the world, but I can infuse my own best into what's going on around me. That motivates me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's what
Mm-hmm.
changed me from an angry dad to a rad dad. Like that's why I wanted to do that, because I don't want to grow up. I don't want my kids to grow up grumpy and emotionally stunted like I did. You know,
Mm-hmm.
because if they do, then they're not going to put their best into the world. So I would think that that's my answer, is that we're just not facing it, and
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because the
you're right.
resources are there. Things are out there, whether it's therapy or men's programs or coaches, or in some instances, medication, whatever works, but through a professional, obviously. And I think it's really important for us to actually help each other understand how much it helps to go get help. How much it works to go get help.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You're right. It's 77% of men, but it'll be interesting to see what's going on the woman's side as well. Whereas to flip side of the coin, where, if it's affecting men, it's also leaking out to the other side. And beyond the systemic component of it, the ability to change is very much in our hands. I just spoke with this lady, Jane Honigman, and we're going to be releasing this episode soon. She started her work with parents in I think 1960s, but
Oh wow,
however, it was
cool.
it was long enough ago that there is nothing even for women out there, right? Like you're
Right.
right, there are resources out there if you're looking, but there is very much a time where for parents there are just no resources at all. And that conversation was very special because her mentality was kind of like that of ours, where we see these problems and we're like, we gravitate towards them and start bringing solutions to these problems in a way that has a great impact on people. And one of the things that she drew my attention towards was the importance of grassroots movements,
Oh
because
yeah.
everything that she did, these are national organizations today, they're international organizations today, but they all started as grassroots movements. People like yourselves, to some degree, people like myself who see these problems
Yeah.
and bring solution to them through our capacities, right? Um, Very often, large organizations are also bound by their mission. They're
Yeah.
established and they don't have too much wiggle room with what they can do, right? But for us, we're coming it from a very novel perspective through experiences of our time that um, we're able to um, give and provide to other parents and other fathers in ways that would have helped us if we had those resources too,
Yeah.
right? So I think with what you're doing, what Jane spoke about reminds me, well, it is what you're doing. It's a grassroots solution to a problem that may be systemic,
Right.
to a problem that may come from whatever aspect of society that may be out of our control to some degree. I can't also answer why it is that we have consistent statistics from Canada, the US, the UK. I bet you Australia is probably not different in terms of this separation of fathers from family and whatever the causes may be. But then I'm having a lot more belief in some of these grassroots movements that are being born through social media, through our ability to exploit social media, I should say.
Yeah.
through coaches like yourself, it is always important to refer people to professional help. But there's also that relatedness where you've spoken about this on a few times, where men don't want to deal with the emotions. We do want to change. If we can start working on these behaviors without working on the emotions right away, it may help us get to that footing where we can eventually work with the emotions,
Amen.
right?